Hello, hello, everyone. Ugh, I have to change that. Hello. I am Dr. Isela Garcia, and I am here to talk about sort of managing all of the things that are happening in the world right now and finding your access to your divine wisdom. See, we all have our own divine wisdom. Well, it's of the collective. So what I mean by that is that your divine wisdom is is basically God in action. Okay? You are an aspect of source. And this divine wisdom is accessible to all of us. It's the process of learning how to go inward and accessing what some people call our intuition. So, our intuition is also known as our oversoul, our deepest I, our highest self. And then you take this just a little bit further and you have access to what some people consider God, the all that is. Some people call Father, Mother, God. So, I mean, there's so many names, right? The universe is another one that is often used. And so, basically, what this means is that the answers that we seek are actually within us, not outside of us. The challenge that we have is that we've been taught to rely on people, systems, and people that we have collectively, I think, as a society, have deemed those that know more than we do. Okay. Now, there's nothing wrong with learning. I'm hoping that you learn from me. I've learned from many people. And so it's, I think, important for us to learn from one another, and ultimately, the goal is to be able to seek our own inner wisdom. And the problem, I don't know if it's the problem, but the challenge that we have is that we often will forget, not forget, don't even know that we have that within us. And trauma, pain, past hurts, our limiting beliefs, those sort of get in the way of us being able to access our divine knowing. And so, this journey into healing is such a critical part of what I consider our sacred journey. Because as we heal, and that looks different for everybody, the healing journey looks different for everyone. Sometimes it's the process of working through forgiveness. Sometimes it's almost always it has to do with the level of our own, the perception of our own worth. Sometimes it requires learning things like how to let go and how to create boundaries and how to be able to speak assertively when somebody is crossing those boundaries. There's so many things that we are experiencing in this lifetime. And so part of our sacred journey is to start to identify the things that get in the way of us being able to access this divine wisdom. So for me, the goal is to help you be able to do that. Now, I have the ability, not because I'm better than anybody or more special. I want to make that very clear because it's a really important part of the work that I do. I can intuitively connect with folks. And so what that means is I can intuitively connect with you at the level of your soul. And I can go, okay, let's figure out what it is that is getting in the way of you accessing the truth of who you are, which is a divine being. Okay, you are a divine being, and you have all of the answers to the questions that you have within you. Okay, so my job, I believe it is my job in this lifetime, is to help people identify what that is. And that looks like a lot of things. Again, just like the healing journey looks like a lot of things. Sometimes, we don't recognize that we have patterns that we have consistently lived with. We make decisions that kind of drop us into those patterns that have not served us very well. So it's helpful to have somebody who can intuitively tap into that part within us and help identify what those things are so that you can start working in the direction of releasing, of healing, of integrating, of embodying. I mean, again, so many different approaches and so many different things that people experience. So you start to move in the direction of your own healing. And the more we practice this and the more that we get very clear about our direction, the better we get at learning to not only hear our intuition, listen to our intuition, and actually begin to trust. And the trusting part is the most important part because I promise you, the universe conspires for you. It doesn't conspire against you. We're the ones that get in the way of being able to access this divine wisdom. Okay. So, what I wanted to do was just jump on and share a little bit about how I help others and even how I do this myself maneuver through all of the stuff that's happening in the world right now, because it can be very, very overwhelming, especially if you're in tune to what's happening on a day-to-day basis. And I would encourage you to continue to pay attention to what's happening. But if you are feeling afraid, we want to explore why. Now, I know that sounds like a silly statement, doesn't it? Of course I'm afraid. All these things are happening in the world. Why wouldn't I feel anything but afraid? Because anything could happen, right? I get that. I get that. But what's happening is the stuff that's going on might be triggering or activating something within you. So fear, there are different levels of fear, and I'm going to kind of save that for another. Maybe I'll talk about that next. Maybe next week I'll jump on and talk about the different levels of fear. But what happens within us is we become afraid. And one of the things that I lead people through the process of is exploring what exactly is this fear about. Okay. And as we start to talk about this and sort of uncover these things, sometimes this leads to times in our life, other times in our life where we also felt afraid. And we start to explore what needs maybe were unmet at that point in your life. We start to explore the age or ages that you were when you started to feel not safe. Because it's not just what's happening outside of us, it's what's happening outside of us and what that is bringing up for us. Because again, I'm going to go back to one of the things that we, I think, are supposed to do in this lifetime is to really work on ourselves and going inward. And the things that are happening outside of us, the relationships you have, the jobs you have, the experiences you have, all of those things actually are happening for you. And I know that's really hard. It's really hard to wrap our arms around that, isn't that? Because we're like, these horrible things have happened. What do you mean they're happening for me? Well, they are opportunities for us to be able to delve deeper into our own personal development, our own healing journey. Okay. And the better we can get at identifying some of these things, I don't want to say the easier, because it's not always easy, but then we are very better aware of what it is we have left to heal. So going back to fear, and we're exploring the fear that we might be experiencing. It's not just what's out here, but it's also what's happening within us. And that is what we can control. In the last video, I was on here a few days ago, I talked about the circle of influence, the circle of control, and the circle of concern. And sometimes identifying those things, what is it that I can control? How can I be influential? And what do I have no control over, no direct control or no direct influence of? But how can I contribute to this idea of I'm concerned, and how do I contribute to the betterment of all people? Okay. And so watch that video if you're interested in knowing more about that, because one of the things that I think is critically important is to build our capacity. And what that means is it's like building our own ability to be able to identify some of these things that are getting in the way of our peace of mind, getting in the way of us being able to access our divine intuition, that we want to kind of create well, instead of trying to describe this to you, I'm going to just share with you. I'm trying to remember her name. Irene Lyon, that's her name. She does an amazing analogy of building capacity. And I think it's probably the best I've ever seen. So imagine a swimming pool. And there are a lot of beach balls, big beach balls, little beach balls in this swimming pool. Now, this swimming pool represents maybe your life or someone's life. And the big beach balls represent big traumas. You know, a lot of us, most of us have had significant things happen in our life that have impacted how we experience life. So these big T's is what we call them. And then we have these little T's, which are the smaller traumas. Now, these culmination of these smaller traumas is kind of what complex PTSD is. It's like this culmination of all of these things that weren't these big events, but they were traumatic nonetheless. And so we're this big pool, right? And then we have the big beach balls and we have the small beach balls, and they're all compressed, pushed into this swimming pool. And what happens, like, this is my maximum capacity with the big balls and the little balls. This is my maximum capacity. And when we're going to work on something, sometimes what happens is we go to pull this ball out, and let's say it's fear. Okay, we're going to just identify the fear that's showing up for me today. So we go to pull out this beach ball, and all of a sudden it goes, because they were so pushed in one space together. And that can feel very overwhelming. That can feel almost overwhelming. I won't say almost. For some people, overwhelming to the point where you just kind of collapse. You freeze. You can't do it. And this is why so many of us, when we're moving in the direction of starting and wanting to feel better, and we're moving like, I want to move in the direction of healing. But the moment I start to play around with identifying the things that are causing and creating the chaos within me, it becomes too overwhelming for me. And I disassociate, I shut down, I distract myself with vices, eat, drink, porn, like the things that people use to escape. Okay. And so this is why we go, no way, I don't want to do this. And so what we need to do is actually make the pool just a little bit bigger. Okay. Now that's what we call building our capacity. Make that pool just a little bit bigger. So now the balls are swimming around and there's space, right? So when we pull one out to work on it, it doesn't feel so damn overwhelming. I can actually work on this one thing and still have space to breathe and to move and to get through life. Okay. And so that's what it means to, again, build our capacity. Okay. And so that's what my hope is. What I do, and I have a partner. She's a life coach, Nina Vasquez, who's a trauma-informed life coach. She's the way that I kind of describe her is that she is a calm presence, and she helps with embodiment. How do you take, and so many of us who disconnected from our emotional state, we don't know how to be in our body. We don't know how to connect to our body. We don't know how to be with our emotions, especially if we're experiencing something that feels super uncomfortable. We spend most of our lives trying to run away, disassociate, disconnect, protect ourselves from feeling, right? And for many of us, we were not given permission to feel. And if you're from my generation, I'm a Gen Xer, we heard messages like, you want something to cry about? I'll give you something to cry about. And so we learn to swallow back those tears. We learn to pretend that we were fine because our feelings were not acceptable. And I would just want to say here, not everybody comes from sort of what trauma, I guess. Not everybody comes from the type of trauma that I experienced as a child, which had a lot of emotional and physical abuse. But I think in my generation and back, I would even probably say for many millennials as well, it wasn't that you didn't have parents that didn't care about you and didn't love you. It's that the information about understanding the implications of not having good attunement, or somebody who knew and understood how you expressed your needs and how to meet those needs, that information wasn't easily accessible. We didn't have a deep understanding of brain development, of nervous system development. And when we're talking about culture, those of us people of color, we also, unfortunately, our culture didn't trust the healthcare systems, including mental health, and it wasn't accessible to us. We just, not only did we not trust it, it was hard to access it. So we were in a system that really made it hard for people to have a deeper understanding. And you add on their own generational trauma as well. So it's hard to give what you don't have. And some people will say that it's damn near impossible to give what you don't have. So this process is a huge endeavor. It's a huge endeavor. But I will tell you that I do believe, as a spiritual guide, as a medium, as an intuitive trauma healer, that we are here to do this work. We think that it's to do all of the other things. And yes, those other things are important, especially if you're healing in order to be of service to others, because I know that was my journey and that was my experience. And so I believe that we're here to remember the truth of who we are, the truth of who we are, which means that we are divine beings. We have access to source, that we can access that at any time. And the ultimate goal, I know for me, is to access it in the midst of chaos. That when things are hard, that I can still access my own divine knowing. Okay. And how do I know? I get this question a lot. How do I know that it's a divine knowing? And the way that you know is, well, let me back up. It's not the way that you know. It's that we start to establish a relationship with our bodies. And what I mean by that is our body gives us information. Our emotions give us information. Now, emotions happen quickly. Something happens and I immediately have an experience. So that gives me information. I'm feeling uncomfortable. I'm feeling frustrated. I'm feeling sad. I'm feeling annoyed. I'm feeling afraid. Like that gives me information. Okay. And I want to be able to understand what's showing up for me. I want to give space so that I can experience what's showing up for me instead of pushing it away. Because when I acknowledge it, it can actually move through me. Okay. It doesn't have to take over me so that I'm so overwhelmed that I can't even process it. So once we learn how to do this, we can start to actually feel this calm presence. This is our deepest sense of self. There's a calm presence. And the information coming through feels like love. Feels like love. And the other challenge, there's so many challenges, but because it's multifaceted. The other challenge is many of us who didn't experience love that was wholly and completely unconditional, where love was based on conditions. And what you did and what you said were tied to whether you experienced or you received love, affection, attention, and approval. So we have this idea of love as something that we give and receive as a transactional experience, as opposed to love in its true essence. Now, love is who we are. See, God is love, and love is God. So when we can access that unconditional love, the love that has no limitations, that there is no judgment, it's in the beginning, it's uncomfortable because it's foreign, especially if you didn't receive that consistently throughout your life. Because your body is in your brain is going to go, what the heck is going on here? This isn't what love is. But once you practice this, and this is where self-love becomes really important. Self-love just isn't about loving what you see in the mirror. It's not just loving the body that you have. It's not just, that's not just what self-love is for. Self-love is actually the way that we love, that we access the love that we are. Okay. We begin with what we see. And the more we work on honoring ourselves, listening to our own needs, being able to trust that when things show up for us, that we're going to actually respond. So what I mean by that is, how many of us have ignored times when you are thirsty, or when you're hungry, or when you're tired, when you need to take a break? And there's that small voice in you that says, no, you got to push through. There's no time. There's a timeline. We got to get things done. So we learn to ignore our body's cueing systems. Like, we learn to ignore that. So once you start to hear your body communicating with you, to acknowledge what it is that you're experiencing and to take action. So when you feel like you need a break, you actually get up and take a break. We have to go to the bathroom. You get up and you go to the bathroom. And so that whole journey into honoring the self, you start to feel love for yourself. That kind of love, we got to work through it all. We got to work through the guilt, and we got to work through the shame, and all of those things, we have to identify. But once we start to do that work, we start to get a glimpse into what it means to be love, to access the love that we are. So going back to the original statement that I made, how do we know that the voice that we're hearing is of our divine intuition of God? It's because it feels like nothing else but love. Nothing else but love. It feels safe. It feels comforting. It feels like a warm blanket. And there's no judgment in it. And there is absolutely no fear. So when people talk about messages coming through that feel, fear, there's fear behind it. There's a warning bell. That's not source. That's not source. That's not spirit. And what I mean by spirit, it's anybody who is not informed that we connect with. That's not that, because they come from the lens of love. Okay. So the more you can practice this, the easier it becomes, because not only is there a divine knowing that runs deep within us, we're almost working against how our brain has developed. And so let me kind of lean into that just a little bit. From inception in this lifetime, we form synaptic connections in the brain based on the experiences we have. So we all come with sort of this, biological mix, right, of your parents, of whoever, I don't want to say parents, but whoever kind of came together to have you. Okay. We have this biological mix. And so we definitely have genes and DNA that play a significant part. But our experience of life, everything that we experience, contributes to the way that our brains are built. Okay. And so from the very beginning, we start to understand in your family, how do you receive love, attention, affection, and approval? How was that? And so this is stuff that you don't consciously remember, because it happens in the very, very beginning of life, first few years in life. And so our brain is built based on our experiences. And so now we fast forward to them patterns that you have continued to live given those early experiences. Now we're coming to this place of trying to change our relationship with love, our understanding of self, identifying some of the limiting beliefs that we might have. So we start to do this work, and you better believe that your brain and your body are going to reject it. It's going to reject it because it feels unnatural. It's not something that you had experienced before. And so this is an important, and we actually have to lean into it. Instead of run away from it, we got to lean into it. And this is why community is so important. Community is so critically important in this process. Being around people who can support you, guide you when you need it, to help you be self-reflective, to help you be accountable. Community helps us when we are exploring these parts of ourselves. It's really hard to do this when you're alone. And so, having said that, I have a community. Nina and I have a community that we are growing, and would love to invite you to check us out and see if what we offer aligns with or resonates with you. Now, there are a lot of people out there like me who do the work that I do, and that's intuitively helping people access the truth of who they are, and they'll be able to tap into their divine wisdom. And so it's not unique work, but the key is to find someone who you resonate with, because there's a vibrational match that happens. And I don't know if you've ever experienced this in your life, but sometimes some people will come into our lives, and it's a good experience, whether it be a friendship, whether it be mentorship. It could be lots of different types of relationships that we have, and it's a really good match. It feels good. And so at the time, it feels really, really good. And then what happens is, as you continue healing or growing or learning or doing the things that feel good for you, that work for you, then there might come a time where that relationship doesn't, I don't want to say appeal to you, but just doesn't resonate anymore. And that happens. It does. We have the way that I kind of see this journey of life, this sacred journey, we have these chapters, kind of like chapters in a book. And there are people who were really important in certain periods of my life. I think about the first time I ever worked. So I used to do crisis intervention, and one of the very first programs that I worked at was a drug and alcohol treatment center. It was a residential treatment center. And I was the director of the early childhood program on that campus. And I worked with LCDCs, which are licensed chemical dependency counselors. And I have to tell you, I learned so very much from them. They were such an integral part of my own healing. I was in my early 20s at the time. And they are important people in that chapter in my life. Important people. Even the ones that weren't so great were important people in my life, because it helped me learn more about myself. The bad situations helped me. And even if I didn't resolve that situation at the time, or I wasn't maybe mature enough to be able to identify the things that were showing up for me, it still moved me along this path so that I could come to a place of developing this deeper sense of awareness. And so we all have these chapters in our life of the people that played a significant part. And once you start to awaken to this understanding that you have so much power, to create the reality and create the life that you really want to experience, even with all the stuff happening in the world. And I know this is really hard to wrap your arms around, that in spite of everything that's happened, you can still have peace. Now, I'm not saying that we sit back and do nothing, because we are tied to a collective oneness. And I believe that we have a very strong responsibility to one another. We have a strong responsibility to actually be the light in the world, and also to speak on behalf of those who are unable to do so for whatever reason. So I have a very strong commitment to do that. So it's not what we call spiritual bypassing, where we just pretend like everything's okay. What it is access, or seeing all of the things that are happening, take an action where you can, and at the same time, being able to find your own peace of mind, to be able to access your own wisdom and divine knowing. Okay. And that takes a lot of skill. Remember, I was telling about the pool. So we have to build the capacity to be able to do that. Okay. Looking at the time here. Actually, I think I think I'm going to end right there for today, because I've been on for 31 minutes. I will jump on next week. I'm going to try to create a more consistent schedule to come on board here and be able to chat and just kind of share my wisdom. And I think what we're going to talk about next time is how to build capacity. So we'll do that for next time. Thank you all for hanging. I hope if you catch me on the replay, please drop a comment. I'm going to put out a schedule. I'm going to try to be more consistent, because we've got to grow this page. So if you can share this out, if this is interesting to you, or you know somebody that would find this helpful, please forward this to them. We want to be able to offer our support, especially during this time, because all of us who do this work, whether you are a healer, you are a spiritual teacher, you're a coach, you're a medium, a psychic, like, this is our time right now. And so what I mean by that is, like, we signed up to be here right now, and this is our time. A lot of us have gone through our own healing journey, maybe even still working on some of that healing. I continue to grow and to understand myself deeper every single day. And so we continue to do the work as well, but we are here to be the light in the times of darkness. And so if you are afraid to show up for others, I encourage you to do so. I've been trying to push myself out here as well. And consistency is I haven't been very consistent. So if you are somebody who knows that you can help others, I encourage you to step out and do the work. Okay. All right, everyone. Have a good rest of your day, and I will see you soon.